Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this InfoReady Peer Spotlight webinar on the second day of summer. It's a beautiful day here. I hope it's a beautiful day where you are as well. We're happy to welcome panelists today from the University of Idaho and Lehigh University to discuss how they manage research development and research administration at their respective institutions. We have a nice set of questions, and there'll be open Q&A later in the webinar. On the next slide, I'm also going to be showing you some of the benefits of using InfoReady and what sets it apart. For those of you familiar with InfoReady, it's a full service tool with no IT support needed. An example of that is that the only time IT is used is to set up the single sign-on. After that, you really don't need to involve them, and I would say administrators rave about that fact in and of itself. Additionally, administrators using InfoReady are able to create their own templates and opportunities without having anyone else involved, and then can launch it quickly as needed. You're also able to run an unlimited number of opportunities and competitions with different administrators. And so the panelists today, they're both administrators, but they have other people in their office that also manage some processes as well. These two are the most familiar at their institutions, so they'll be able to provide a nice overview. On top of that, since everyone's functioning and operating in the same place, it provides a centralization of all the data that you're collecting. That's going to improve reporting and oversight and just general management of the processes. And it's fast to set up. I'm not going to say 2 weeks. We can do a rush job, but I don't want to put that pressure on our onboarding team. But it could definitely be done in that timeline. And so moving on, you may have seen in the poll question that we had asked you what types of processes you run in your office. InfoReady is a pretty flexible tool, and it's used to manage dozens and dozens of processes throughout institutions, be it in research or in other parts of campus. That flexibility really is another thing that sets InfoReady apart and allows one tool to be used in a variety of ways. And then with that said, I'd like to go over today's schedule and logistics. So the webinar is scheduled for 60 minutes. About 40 minutes of that we're scheduled for the discussion with our panels today. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A from the audience. And so when you want to if you do have a question that you want to pose, please use the Q&A feature in the Zoom platform. You'll probably notice that your phones are muted. So Q&A is a way to go. We also had some questions submitted upon registration, so we'll bring those up as well. Second to last point here, this webinar is being recorded. So if you wanted to revisit it, there's a couple different ways we'll share that with you. One is on our webinars page on our website, and we'll also email out the webinar recording afterwards. And lastly, there is a post-webinar survey that will automatically load in your browser once you exit. If you have some time, feel free to fill that out and offer additional feedback for us. We'd love that. Now, having said all of that, it's time to introduce the people you came here to see and listen to. So first, I'd like to introduce Jenny Chao. She is a research program development specialist in the Office of Research at Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. If I'm not mistaken, that's in Eastern Pennsylvania, right, Jenny? She has an MA in counseling psychology. Her role includes managing internal grants, providing proposal development training, and resources such as faculty proposal writing groups. She does limited submissions, and she is involved in research communications. That's quite a list. Prior to this research role, Jenny held positions as business manager and clinical therapist. So thank you, Jenny, for joining us today. And then, excuse me, we also have Carly Cummings joining us. She's the Senior Director of the Office of Research and Faculty Development at the University of Idaho. So Carly joined the University of Idaho 5 years ago to launch the Office of Research and Faculty Development. So she has experience opening a new unit and setting it up on campus. So that's definitely, with the trend in research development growing, she's, if you have questions about that, you have someone that can answer those. And so she opened the office, and it's been a key mechanism to grow the University of Idaho research enterprise. In this role, Carly and her team develop and deploy resources and services to enhance the readiness of the University of Idaho faculty members to develop competitive grant proposals. I must say, you two do a lot in your office, and we're really lucky that you're able to share some time with us and the audience here. Thank you so much. Now that we did those intros, let's get this show started with the meat of the program. So let's start with Carly here. Carly, to set the stage for everyone listening in, could you describe your role, where your team fits into the Office of Research, the number of team members, number of faculty you work with, R&D dollars, types of programs, all of that?
Sure, happy to. And thanks again for the invitation to be able to talk with folks today. So our office, so I report to the Associate Vice President for Research, who reports to the VPR. So we're very connected to the VPR, and I think there's a dotted line probably between myself and the VPR. We are in a lot of communications together because he sees our office as a strategic partner in growing the research enterprise for the University of Idaho and figuring out how to do that very strategically. And so our office has experienced some growth. And we are now an office of 6 that includes myself. And so we have myself and 2 individuals that are the limited submission team. And then we have 3 other proposal development specialists with 1 more to come on in about a month or so. So we're not a small office, but we started small. We started from 0, right? So we have experienced what it's like to be that small office, and then also what it's like to grow that. As far as the University of Idaho, we're an R2 research university, and our research expenditures are about $116.5 million last year. And I really struggle to tell you the number of faculty we have on campus that we work with. It's a few hundred. I'll just sort of throw that out there. But we don't have like really great data on that. So yeah, any other questions there, Carlos?
I have lots of questions. No,
Okay.
All joking aside, no, that was great. Thanks for sharing that background information. Well, what types of programs are you running aside from limited submissions?
Okay, so within InfoReady, we run, we have internal funding programs as well. And we also run a lot of our competitions for our faculty development cohort. So we have a proposal development academy, we have a leadership academy, these types of things that are competitive. We run everything through InfoReady. It's our It's the program that solves all of our process management woes and problems. So everything goes through InfoReady that we can.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm happy to hear that you're running as much as you can through InfoReady. That's for sure. So switch over to Jenny so she could provide more background on Lehigh. Jenny, do you want me to restate what the question?
I think I can follow what Carly talked about, and you just let me know if I missed anything. So Lehigh University is also an R2 institution. Our research expenditures are lower. We're at about 40 to 45 million in terms of expenditures. We are aiming to double that over the next 8 to 10 years. So in terms of challenges, I know we'll talk about that a little later on, but that is going to be one of our challenges is growing and being able to achieve that goal. We have about 550 faculty. It's a diverse range. I mean, not all of them are tenure track, but the majority are. We do have some like teaching track, research track. From our research development office, we probably engage with 200 to 300 of them on a more regular basis. So I report to the director of research development, who reports to the VPR. We have a very small team. The research development group is just myself and the director of research development. So in terms of, what you sort of shared with my bio sketch is that we do a little bit of everything just because of need. So, compliance, tech transfer, sponsor programs, we all sit in one office and we're about, 20, 25 people, but that includes like all of the, the research STEM. So in terms of what we use InfoReady for, we have a fairly robust internal grant program, which distributes about, I would say about 500,000 to 600,000 each year for different research initiatives. And so we manage that completely through InfoReady, from application to review to award. That's primarily what we signed up for InfoReady for. And on top of that, we also share the license with other departments at Lehigh, and they tend to use it for student awards, undergraduate and graduate, like fellowships, travel grants, and so forth. So it's primarily like application award driven. And we do have a lot of users doing that. Did I miss anything?
I think you got it all. Thanks for the background information. Excuse me. And so, Jenny, you mentioned challenges, and so your small team, what kind of challenges does that pose when you're trying to manage all of these?
I think being a one-stop shop for everything. So you're sort of pulled in different directions all the time. So just scaling up to the increasing demands that our university is seeing, that's just overall the bigger challenge. We are trying to, expand, grow the size of our team, and hopefully that'll give us some relief. But right now we would like to offer more services that we're just not able to do because like there's only 2 of us. And so we do a lot of like, for example, we would like to bolster proposal writing support and development, but right now we're not able to offer as much one-on-one, like very like detailed level. We do instead, peer group reviews so that there can be more people to kind of share the effort and also the benefit. So I think just one of the challenges is just size. I would say another one of the challenges that comes with being a small institution is that we are starting to have to collect more and better outcome data, which historically we didn't used to do because we didn't have very many faculty to keep track of, or even like limited submissions, for example. We have very few, so few that we don't really have to like we don't have endless like teams asking to apply. Like sometimes it's, it's like we go out and we talk to teams and we approach them to apply. So I think as we're scaling up and more people need and want, assistance with putting in a good grant, we're having to figure out like, okay, well, how can we do more with what we have? So that's a tricky part. And also, how do we measure that in a way that can capture what we're trying to do? And so just coming up with like the new metrics and, data collection. Actually, quite a lot of the the users on InfoReady have been helpful for that in terms of giving ideas. So definitely feel like the InfoReady sort of like user base has been a great sort of resource.
Oh, it's great to hear. It's gratifying. For those of you who don't know, there's a InfoReady listserv, and we also have webinars and introduce admins to one another as well. And admins talk to each other outside of our involvement as well through organizations such as Nordic. So Jenny, I'm going to come back to some of those challenges because I want to hear from Carly what types of challenges have you been experiencing at University of Idaho in the last couple of years, right? There was disruption in operations, right? So everyone's having to scramble. What types of challenges have you faced the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think similar to what Jenny mentioned, University of Idaho is looking to grow our research and expand our portfolio. And so trying to figure out what that means for the University of Idaho and trying to find like the right size programming, the right sort of culturally relevant funding opportunities that will give our faculty what they need. So there was a lot of sort of needs assessment and trying to understand what is needed on our campus. I mean, I talk with a lot of my colleagues around in other institutions, what are they doing and what's working for them. But I think the challenge is for me is to figure out how to make that right size for the University of Idaho and make it effective so we are getting the outcomes that we intend with the investments we're making. And one of the things that we're looking at now is, because our limited submission process runs through our office, which is, right, the mission of our office is to enhance the research enterprise of the university. We see that as an opportunity to engage in the limited submission process that isn't just completely mechanical, right? Like launching things, awarding, and moving on. So like that is, I wanted to take advantage of the fact that we are a research development office. And so our limited submission team and I have been strategizing about how, now that we've got, a few years of data from InfoReady about where our faculty are competing and where they're not, but they should, we're sort of making a strategic march toward getting folks more engaged in applying for limited submission funding opportunities. And so we're doing some digging around and doing some more data analysis to figure out where we could be more competitive. But I see that InfoReady has allowed us to have a real good view of where we're not competing, but also where we see great opportunities. And so we're taking advantage of having that information in our office to do some outreach, to do some like kickoff meetings around certain limited submission funding opportunities, to get interest, to have individual one-on-one conversations and so on. So we're taking the opportunity of having the limited submission process run through our office as one where we can input hopefully some efforts to enhance our competitiveness going forward. So that's something that's sort of a new thing, and that's an exciting thing, but that's also going to be a challenge to figure out how to, again, do that right for us.
Yeah. Oh, I can. So this follow-up question is going to go kind of to the challenge of pushing out into these new endeavors. Thus far, I know it's still early. Thus far, how has the engagement from the faculty been with these new initiatives that you've made?
Yeah. So we have not launched our, we're calling it Priority Limited Submission Funding Opportunity Program. We haven't launched that yet, but what we had started to do in other initiatives is, we have a funding opportunity for helping faculty members that their proposals were declined, but they have pretty favorable reviews. So we have, a lot of institutions have this Operation Resubmission Success type things that has been a really beneficial component for our faculty, because what we have observed is a lot of faculty would take a lot of work to write a proposal. It's declined, and then they just kind of sit on it like, oh, okay, I guess I can't do that. And so we're working to try and kind of coaching faculty that no, like you really should resubmit. This is sort of part of the process, and then talking them through, evaluating what's in the reviews, and then they have opportunities to apply for funding to address specific actionable items in the comments themselves. So that's been a really well-received program for us, just sort of starting at that level of, okay, you're declined. The show isn't over. In fact, it's just sort of beginning. And being able to have that opportunity to engage with faculty in that way, they feel like, this, like it's Christmas for them. They had no idea like there was actually some help in that way. And so for our faculty, we're trying to get folks to do the resubmissions and get better positioned to be funded on that second or third try. So that's been very well received. But the challenge too is getting the word out. It's just hard to always get the word out.
Yeah, no, you have to communicate in multiple different methods and channels in order for people to realize what it is you're trying to do. It's great that it's going well so far. I'm sure that energizes you and helps you redouble your efforts. It also sounds like you've had to, part of it's also training them to think about the process differently. So, Jenny, while Carly was talking, I saw you nodding your head. Do you have something similar going on at Lehigh?
For sure, Carly, I can definitely echo your sentiments. So one of the things that we would like to do more of is kind of like, well, we've been calling it kind of like a post-mortem of, once you get your grant reviews, people just kind of like let it drop, and it was so much work, and then like nothing comes of it. So in terms of like research engagement with the faculty, we've done a number of things that have been successful, not specifically with like doing the sort of like sort of post-mortem analysis, but in terms of like letting faculty know that we are here to support them and that we can sort of help them with figuring out grant opportunities and, help them with their proposal development. So a lot of the time it's just a lack of information and communication. So some of the things we've done in terms of outreach are we've been going to the colleges. So Lehigh has 4 colleges: engineering, arts and science, College of Health, Business, and Education. That's 5 actually. We visit them at the beginning of the year during their orientation to do like a little participate. Like we sort of ask to be have like a half hour at their orientation meeting for new faculty, just to show our face, introduce ourselves, and let them know we're here and like what we do. That's actually been quite helpful. Like people are starting to turn up at our events more often. From that initial point of contact. In terms of like our communications, we also started putting out a newsletter this year once a month, because we found that we were just sending endless emails about, oh, here's an opportunity, oh, here's another opportunity. So we'd have like a lot of emails going out, and everyone's so busy with so many emails, we decided to try and condense that into one place. So it's basically like a once a month summary of like, here are the opportunities out there, both internal and external. Also some like tidbits of news. It's become like our research STEM newsletter. And we worked with our university communications office to kind of create a look for that. And then they developed the template for us. And it's like this newsletter that we run through our server system that like has everybody, all the faculty, all the staff on it. And so we send that out once a month for outreach. And that's been great because as soon as we send out that email, we can see registration rates jump because people are reminded to sign up. So that's definitely something I wanted to pass along because it was like recommended to us. We've started doing it and really found that like we have more connection that way. And also we are sending fewer emails that are getting lost and people getting frustrated with just like too many emails. So for us, that's worked really well. And I think
too many emails creates noise and then they ignore everything. So
yeah, so it's been good to have it in one place. And then I think one of the key things has been to share it with staff because it's mostly very much focused on the faculty, but when the staff know about the opportunities, they also pass along that information and they talk to the faculty. And so administrators tend to be the staff. And so sometimes there is like a communication gap between like, well, the information needs to get to the faculty, but then like it may, but then nothing happens with it. But so we started sending this newsletter out to like basically the university at large. And it's sort of like, you know, developed as we've gone along to see what works. And so now we keep expanding the audience to include more people who tell us like they want to get the newsletter. Because we were just limiting it to like anybody working directly on research gets the newsletter, but now just like pretty much everybody at the university gets it. So that's been useful to have. And also just word of mouth. Faculty who've done our proposal writing groups, they'll talk to junior faculty and say, you should definitely participate in this and share their experiences. So we run like an NSF career proposal writing boot camp that's really well attended. And then the people who do the boot camp with us tend to have higher rates of success with funding.
That's wonderful. And then they spread the word, I hope.
And we also try and like just make sure we get to know the junior faculty, the new faculty coming in, just right off the bat and start right away and say like, let's talk about your early career plan. So that's been good too. They've been very active, the junior faculty.
Great. I'm going to ask a follow-up question to that in a moment, but both of you described new initiatives to engage with faculty members in different types of ways and raise the awareness of resources that were available and new types of opportunities to get them thinking about the research differently and how they go about it from an operational perspective. So what type of data are you looking at to determine how to do these things, how you go about them, and also I guess what types of I would say things that people weren't applying to before are they starting to apply to now? We haven't heard from Carly in a little bit, so we'll switch to her and then I'll come back to you.
Sure. Those are really good questions, Carlos. And the data part is very important, but also I think one of the more challenging pieces to get a real sense of to get the right data to be able to make those decisions. But I would say that as far as thinking about our process of identifying, if we have, having just run limited submission for 5 years, I've got like a knowledge of what programs I get excited about every year, and then I see nothing coming in about, no one's applying. So I have like just sort of my own recall of pain points for me, like, oh, darn, we should be applying for that because we'd probably be competitive. And so what we started doing sort of more recently is starting like within InfoReady, sharing with 2 or 3 individuals that are really closely matched in as far as their research goes, and we can get into our research administration management system and do some searching to try and find people if they don't come to mind. And we've done some of that too, to try and find, if there's some that are really obvious for the strengths of University of Idaho, we've started to share out, and we've seen people then pick up and then go ahead and submit an NOI. So that's been encouraging. And so I feel like, even though we send out a limited submission newsletter every week, folks might just, not read it probably, or just kind of skim through it and just sort of be like, oh, whatever. But when we share it individually, I think that sort of seems to get folks' attention. And the other thing I'll say that has worked this is not intentional, but what has worked to increase individuals' interest in a limited submission program is having them serve as a reviewer on the internal panel. And so that sort of forces that individual to get to know the solicitation and the program and what they're about. And we've chosen them as reviewers because they are like somewhat adjacent to whatever that program is. And so what we've seen too is some of those reviewers then come back as applicants the following year. And so I think it's a matter for thinking about limited submission efforts specifically. I think it's a matter of getting sort of targeting the messaging to those individuals that could be potential applicants, whether that's, like I said, getting them on a panel or sharing them through InfoReady, but just letting people see that on an individual basis has been effective, although it's very slow, right? Like you kind of wish it would go faster than that. But yeah, that's one thing we've just noticed about how to sort of get a little bit more interest in the limited submission programs.
It's great. Yeah. Sounds like getting them acclimated to a certain way of thinking is important for them.
Yep.
To allow them to take the next step.
Agreed. And before we came here, like limited submission was somehow run on a paper, like there's paper process. And like, I don't really know that there was any big announcements that went out, but we've found sort of files of paper, people submitting like NOIs and things. So I just think we have to sort of start from zero with the fact that there are, like 130 of these that we announce every year. And there's we announce limited submission funding opportunities that are relevant to us. We don't announce all of them. And so just trying to get the word out that there's this special set of funding opportunities that has a limited pool of competition is sort of, it's been a challenge for us in that way, but we're just sort of chipping away at that challenge to try and change some perceptions about where they could be competitive that's might be different than where they typically look for funding.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, you're putting the pieces in place for the long-term plan. So that's you always have to have your eye on the little steps that add up to the long-term goal. By the way, I hope you didn't have to sit down and go page by page through those paper archives.
No, then they basically didn't help us at all. So they just stayed in the file cabinet.
Put them in storage somewhere.
Yeah, that's where they live now.
So Jenny, what areas have you started targeting for faculty research based off of the data you're starting to look at?
Some of them, so in terms of limited submissions, like I was sort of nodding along to what Carly was saying, because I really like, relate, like it's this balance of like, one-on-one personal touch, reaching out to people and like kind of like getting them acclimated to this like way of thinking about applying to things works, but it's very time consuming. But at the same time, when you do like a mass email communication, people aren't looking at it or don't think it applies to them. One of the things just this summer, we're trying to get more of our humanities faculty to apply for the NIH summer stipend. It's a small one, but at the same time, like once you get it, like you're much more competitive for an NIH grant outside of that. So that's something we're trying to do. So part of what we look through in the data, like in our sort of like our research organizational platform, I don't know how else to describe it. Like the research sort of platform that Lehigh uses is that we're looking at past awardees, and where people from a particular department have been pretty successful, and if it's been like a number of years that we haven't seen an applicant from them, we might have another look and say, like, let them know, like, did you know that this so and so and so and so, like, from your department, previously received this award, like, maybe you should consider it, here's why it would be a good fit, and then sort of like offer the support along the way. So what we are planning to do this summer is hold like a panel to and invite sort of previous awardees to talk about, what they did with the grant and like their experience. That's sort of what our model has been, is kind of to like have a peer panel to talk about, their experience of getting the award, their challenges, like successes and so on, and kind of offer a little bit of insight into the program and kind of like encourage people to apply. And so we get a lot of attendance for those types of, like some of them are limited submissions, some more broad, but like NEH summer stipend is just one of them. But we definitely don't advertise every single limited submission opportunity just because we don't get that number of applicants. Like we tend to go for the bigger ones, like the MRI and NRT and so forth. So in terms of like collecting outcomes, we're looking at like number of grants being submitted and then like funding rates. We're trying to look at that big picture. But in terms of my work, I don't really look at the areas of like where Lehigh is going to, grow their successes and so forth. I sort of take direction from, my team.
Are you looking at it? You mentioned before running the internal funding opportunities and also checking the outcomes of that. What kind of correlations are you drawing from people who were awarded internal funds and then them either applying for extramural funding and then even being awarded extramural funding?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a guarantee, sort of like they get the seed funding and then they definitely get the grant, but
it's the hope though, right? That's always the hope. Like we're like building you up to be these rock star researchers bringing tons of money to the university.
We run a few different mechanisms. So some are like small grants, less than 10,000. Some are sort of like, mid-level, like 30 to 60. And then we have a bigger one that's about $100,000 for teams. And when we're awarding the grants, the review committee is looking at things like, like what's the history of like collaborative success of this team, how they worked together before, like, is the idea solid? Is like, the budget sound? How they talked about like, like the potential sort of applications that they could be putting out, like where do they want to go with this this project if they get the funding. So we do ask explicitly, like, it's not a requirement that they submit for external granting, but we do ask, like, what's your plan? What's your long-term plan? And then it generally correlates that like the proposals that are well thought out with these long-term plans and like a good team that like kind of makes a very like strong, compelling case, like they tend to score higher, on the reviews, and then they're more likely to be awarded. On the other hand, like we have faculty who are, humanities or social sciences, and we fund anything that we generally try and find anything that just seems like that sounds like a really exciting, good idea. It doesn't have to be like they've already published on it. But we take chances on, people who have like, I have this great idea, I just don't have a grant for it. I need some money to collect the data and show, like get some pilot data. And then I'm going to apply for this. I don't have concrete numbers, like just like a general feeling of like, like,
no, it's
yeah. So I
you
mean,
do it every day, so you have the sense of okay, it's going in this direction.
Yeah, I mean, and then you see certain teams or individuals that become more successful. So I think like the people who use the seed funding program and come to a lot of the trainings we offer, they tend to be very productive. And in terms of like getting grants and so forth. But when they complete the grant, we do ask them to report on, like, what they've published, how they've disseminated the information, any other sort of like works that they've produced beyond like successful grant proposals. So we're also looking at like papers and talks and other, depending on what their field is, like, like a book or something like that.
It's lots of different things to
Mm.
consider when doing that. Because it's not perfect science selecting someone. Big nod there from Carly. So jumping back to Carly, you've also described several different initiatives and that your team's growing. I've spoken to a lot of people in higher ed the last couple of years who have said that and even on here, like staffing limitations prevent us from doing as much as we want. But in general, we went through a pandemic. It affected how people worked, affected how people were hired. You're growing your team right now, so that's positive. How are all these trends impacting how you're growing your operations and choosing how, where to staff?
Right. Yeah, that is something I think about a lot. And I think the pandemic obviously presented challenges for everyone. And now that we're thinking about staffing in the context of perhaps having people working remotely or hybrid. And so there's all of these different models out there now, not just in research development, obviously, but just across all sectors. That sort of just changed how individuals, what their expectations are of their future workplace involvement, I guess. And so for our team, we are 100% in person, and that is in line with how the University of Idaho is working right now. For the most part, there are some positions that are remote, like in our research administration arm, because that's sort of how that field has progressed and evolved. And so I think that it has been a challenge to just overall just to hire people. For a while there, it seems to have loosened up a little bit as far as at least getting applicants to apply. But I think, thinking about sort of tempering the different initiatives to roll out is 100% dependent on the staff that I have. Right. So so there is this sort of like, when I get more staff, you can do a little bit more. And then, so there's that sort of flux that I'm trying to balance so that we're being as effective as possible with, as lean of a team as possible too. So, and so I do have, big ideas, but big ideas take more humans. So I have to kind of gauge, what are my annual goals or monthly goals based upon the number of staff that we have. So I think that is a challenge. But I do realize that we can't do everything. And so I take a very focused approach on what our metrics will be and our goals will be based upon the staff size. And so I try to communicate our staff effectiveness based upon very specific goals that we have that takes into account the size of our staff.
No, thanks for sharing that. And an obvious follow-up question is, how is technology impacting that? I know both of you have mentioned to me that you have several different pieces of software on campus, InfoReady, of course. So the goal is that for InfoReady to help, InfoReady and other software to help everyone become more efficient. And I want to follow up on all the different software, but we have a few different questions that have been submitted. Let's get to the audience questions, and I'm going to come back and ask you both about software in your offices and and what you're using. So one of the questions we had here, and I'll pose this one to Jenny first. How many different departments use InfoReady on your campus, and how do you work together to use the same site?
Sure. We subscribe to the silver package, which gives us 10 user seats, admin seats. And so our office uses two, and we kind of follow a cost share model, and we ask people to contribute if they'd like to use InfoReady to run like their competitions. So we have, we don't have any departments using it, but we have a number of like administrative offices. So usually like the undergraduate associate dean who's doing like student fellowship awards or travel grants. So engineering has them. We have about like eight different people using the account. So like we are pretty much filling up our 10. And like, you know, arts and sciences, graduate studies office is using that, like the College of Health, like undergraduate coordinating office is using it. So each of these offices has an account where they are doing their applications, and we just share the main site. Like it hasn't been an issue for us in terms of organization, I think, because we don't list too many competitions. And when it has kind of like at times really filled up and the list gets really long and hard for people to sort through, on the sidebar, we just have, and also like all the different administrators using it on the sidebar, we just have a running list of like our names and contact information for like, if you're applying for this kind of application, this is the contact person, so that I'm not getting every single question about InfoReady. And then in the competition title, we like put the name of our STEM. Like, so anything that runs through our research office is titled like VPR, and then the name of the competition. That way, like when you sort the list, it all just kind of like at least is chunked together. And we probably only have like, as you know, probably like a page worth of competitions at a time. It would be nice to go to you know, have our own landing page, but we're not at that usership yet, so we can't really justify the expense.
Totally get it. It's you know, there's the balance, right? Carly, I think it's only research that's using InfoReady at Idaho, so you're not encountering that.
Right. We hope to change that. We're trying to recruit a partner so that we can upgrade to gold, and then we can have the different microsites so that, let's say, the College of Grad Studies or whomever has their own landing page. That would be ideal, because I think our InfoReady homepage is a little crowded as is, because we have limited submissions and our internal funding right now, even on one page. And I would like to separate those into two separate landing pages too, because it does cause confusion, and I understand. And so I think our goal is to recruit an on-campus partner, but to have them have their own microsite and to be able to upgrade to that gold. And so we would employ a model where we would just take those costs from silver to gold and have the other partner cover that. And then we keep 2 of the 3 microsites so we can have our separates too. That's my goal.
It's a smart approach. I've seen other institutions use that approach as well, and they were very pleased with the outcomes.
Yeah, we're looking to do that. So keep your fingers crossed for us. Thank you.
So there, we also had, we've gotten a couple questions related to faculty workloads. So both of them are similar questions, and it's, I'll just ask one of them. What advice would you give to small teams in successfully mobilizing faculty in environments where faculty workloads are already challenging? Jenny?
I guess I was just wondering if they could clarify, like, by faculty workload, do you mean the amount of work faculty have to do to apply for external funding, or like when we're
I think the overall number of tasks and activities they're involved in on campus, right? Such as like, dissertation advisors or serving on other committees or, all.
Well, I can speak in terms of like, when our office reaches out to faculty to ask them to serve on our committee, what we do to try and minimize the amount of like busy work that they have to do. So when we ask them to serve on our internal review committee, we just try and we try and be as efficient as possible with their time. We lay out the expectations really clearly ahead of time. We let them know like how many grant cycles there are, when the review meetings will be, please hold this time. We run it a lot like an NIH panel. We're also actually changing that because the number of applications we're getting has just skyrocketed. We have more faculty than ever, and then we are just getting more interest, I think also because we're advertising more. So we have more applicants. And so this year we had an overwhelming number of applications to go through. And because of that, we've decided to move to like a model where like we skip the review meeting for the sort of lowest funding level of grant and just do like straight written review and like desk decision. And we reduce the number of reviewers on sort of like lower risk proposals. So we're very mindful about the time that we're asking them to spend, and we try and cap it at no more than like 2 grant sort of competitions per reviewer that we're asking them to review for. That's the main way we engage with faculty, and like we're adding to their effort. And then we also make sure to contact their department chairs so that they're aware of like what a great job they're doing in terms of service, so that their service is recognized in their their evaluation for tenure or merit as an element of their service. So we're definitely definitely try and keep on top of that.
And that's one thing they don't have to keep a track of as much as before, since you're doing that on their behalf a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So we try and just track that. And then in terms of their other service, we try not to pull people in who are already overcommitted and we know it. So we try to just choose people who we know recently came off of like another service role.
That's so kind of you.
We try. Sometimes we don't have the choice because
there's nobody else.
Yeah, there's nobody else.
Carly, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think all of that is sort of how we approach our review process too. We don't have a standing panel for the year. We do recruit per program, and so we wouldn't go back to someone for more than one program probably per year unless they were like the one that needs to be on that panel. But I think too that having InfoReady really reduces the burden of a reviewer, right? You go to one spot, everything is there. There's not a bunch of emails and attachments and all. Like it's very straightforward. It would be similar, maybe even better than when someone's an NSF reviewer, like how that process works. And so I feel like, showing and having that upfront communication about here's the expectation of timeline, you will get the concept papers here, the reviews will be due here, and like getting everyone on the same page and then having them agree to function within those parameters. We haven't really had any pushback or anyone saying this is too much. And I also think it's really nice for the applicants too. So they're not having to fill out a form and getting signatures, right? This is all just like all in one system. It's super easy. And so we haven't really had anyone saying that having InfoReady or having like this other thing, because Carlos, you mentioned like there's all these software programs that faculty use. We haven't really heard anything about InfoReady being onerous or an additional thing. And why can't you just use this other thing? We don't get that kind of feedback. So I feel like it's gone over okay, even for faculty that are very busy, which is all of them.
I heard something similar from a VPR at a different institution. He said to me, our faculty were talking about software fatigue, but they didn't say that when InfoReady was introduced. They kind of just it was absorbed into the ecosystem with like few to little bumps in the road. So it's
I can
great to
echo
hear
that.
it occurred at another place. So we've got 5 minutes left. I have a list of questions here. We're not going to get through them all. But let's do this one because it comes back to a topic we discussed before. This person says, I would like to not only know how we can do more, but how we can do things more efficiently. So the question is, how have you done your campus's need assessments to know what the needs are and then also what their priority is? So I think prioritization, given staff constraints, is definitely a big deal there. Carly, you first on that one.
Yeah, sure. As far as needs assessment, so our current VPR started in his role here almost 3 years ago, I guess, or maybe 3 years ago at this point. And he wanted to just break down the silo that the VPR is in this place, and then they're totally disconnected from all of the faculty and the faculty needs and so on. And so he and our associate vice president for research actually went around to every single department on campus and had a listening session. So not at the college level, like at the department level. And so they learned a lot about what the faculty are saying, that are pain points as far as growing their research enterprise and growing their own personal programs and so on. And then we also just did an assessment looking at all kinds of data from, where have we been successful within NSF? Where haven't we been? Where should we be? And sort of identifying these gaps based upon what we know are our research interests and our research strengths, and looking at specifically, we just chose NSF as a starting place since that's where we had really good data, I guess I'll say, and to try and just pinpoint how we can figure out doing some outreach, whether it's like one-on-one or with the department chair, whatever it is, trying to understand how to get people ready. Like, what do those individuals need to be more ready to compete in a particular program? And maybe they tried 5 years ago and they stopped. Like, let's try again. Sort of that re-engaging or engaging for the first time has been a lot of what we have been doing, following the direction of the VPR and what the data are telling us.
Thanks so much for providing that additional detail on doing the assessment. Jenny, really quick, 30 seconds.
I can say that Lehigh has just gone through a strategic planning initiative that started last fall, and similarly involved like the provost, the VP research, and a lot of senior administrators to look at, where is research at Lehigh going in the next, decade. And so there was an open call, a lot of engagement, and there was a campus-wide basically campaign to like have these conversations, lots of listening sessions, and we are sort of defining it this summer. So, there's a entire like website devoted to it. So it's very much like a institution level conversation.
It's absolutely necessary to understand the situation and get that feedback. There's headwinds that higher ed is facing, be it numbers crunch on students or other factors. So the assessment and understanding the situation, having a good plan going forward is extremely important. It's imperative for growth and health of the institution, that's for sure. We've come to the end of our time today. Thanks so much to Carly Cummings from University of Idaho and Jenny Chao from Lehigh University. Just stumbling over my words today. Really do appreciate you joining us on this Peer Spotlight webinar. So we have another Peer Spotlight webinar in about 3 weeks, focused on undergraduate research programs. So that's on July 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We have panelists from the University of California, Irvine, and the University of South Dakota. So we encourage you to join that one if undergraduate research is something that's under your purview, or if you're just curious about the topic. And then lastly, some contact information for you on screen. My colleague, Max Steinerman, he's Director of Sales. His contact information is on there. If you're interested in discussing InfoReady for your campus. And if you are an existing user of the system, feel free to reach out to me, Carlos Wancata, Director of Client Services. There's my email address, or you can reach out to the support team as well. We'd both be glad to reply to any inquiries that you have. And then lastly, thanks everyone for your time today. There's a post-webinar survey. If you'd be so kind as to fill that out, we would really welcome the feedback. And you have a great rest of your week, and 4th of July weekend in a week and a half. Everyone needs some time off during the summer. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks, Carly.
Good to see you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.